Rory McIlroy plays what I would term more of a novelty golf event. 4.2 million people watch. It's not a major tournament. It's 4 dudes playing golf and 4.2 million people watch. This week the news came out. The ShopRite LPGA is going to move from next week, where it was originally scheduled, to the fall, September through October. So we're talking a little more about golf right now with Gil Capps of the Golf Channel. You hear him on the Sports Bash all year long during the golf season. Well, we're going to ask Gil Capps about what we can expect from golf moving forward. And as all guests, he joins us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Gil, happy Memorial Day weekend to you.
Josh, same to you. It's down in Orlando, Florida. Summer is here. So humid, hot, and ready to hit the beach or the pool.
Absolutely. So, Gil, first of all, really quick, do you know off the top of your head what the tournament would have been this weekend on the original PGA calendar?
The original PGA calendar, it would have been the Charles Schwab Challenge, which at Colonial in Fort Worth, Texas, which instead is going to be, as of right now, the first PGA Tour event back here in 2 weeks. So that got slid 2 weeks, and it looks like from all indications, we're going to be moving forward, and we will have official PGA Tour golf returning, albeit with no fans, and probably in a very, from a TV standpoint and watching on TV, a very surreal kind of setting, as it has been if you've watched a little bit of NASCAR or watched a little bit of the Bundesliga from Germany back in action. The fans, lack of atmosphere. It does come across on television, but that said, there's still no substitute for watching a live sporting event where you don't know what the outcome is.
Yeah, and I think there's a genuine hunger for it because, like I said, over 4.2 million people watched. Basically, Rory McIlroy and 3 other golfers, 2 of them that, no offense to them, but I feel like the majority of, casual to intermediate golf fans have no idea who they were. But people were tuning in because they want something to watch. And I feel like when the official PGA restarts, Gil, in a couple of weeks, I think you're going to see some, for lack of a better term, astronomical viewership numbers because people are going to be like, my goodness, we got live sports. I got to watch this. I got to invest myself in it because I haven't had anything like this in so long.
Well, I think you're right. And I think that's one of the incentives that some of these leagues and organizations have had is getting back first. It can put you in a pretty strong position to get a lot more eyeballs on your product, on your sport than it normally does, and maybe can really help give you a boost. I think that's been seen with NASCAR, right? A lot's been written about NASCAR the last couple of years on a downward trend in sponsorships and TV ratings, in attendance, and for NASCAR to be able to get back first and get a really, really strong rating on last Sunday was proof in that. How long that lasts when you get other things starting back up, who knows? But the same can be said a little bit for golf. Golf is without Tiger, it doesn't have kind of, let's face it, I think it's the best individual sport in the world, but its ratings can sometimes be a challenge, especially with as much golf as is on TV, there's live golf on all the time, and the number of hours we televise used to be when I started in this business, and I don't consider myself really old, but when I started, it was 2 hours of cable on Thursday and Friday, and then 2 hours of network on Saturday, and probably 3 hours of network on Sunday. And now those total hours of those events, of events every week like that, have gone up 3 to 4-fold. So that's a lot of live golf to be watching. But if golf can get back in a position to where you can get some strong ratings, maybe get a little momentum as well. And I think that showed last week. I think the number, actually the network number in NBC was comparable to what golf would get for a really strong second quarter event. But that total number that you mentioned is an offshoot of being simulcast on several different NBC Universal networks, and also the charity aspect. Golf has had a long-standing, more than 100 years of really being a sport that's given back. That's put charitable contributions at the forefront, going back to even to World War II, when they had a lot of charity matches for war bonds, and since then. So it's been a sport that's done that. And just looking forward to 2 weeks and golf getting back going on the PGA Tour on a week out basis before a lot of these other sports do.
Gil Capps joining us on the Boardwalk on the Hotline on 97.3 ESPN, Golf Channel, NBC Sports Golf. One of the things that stands out to me is what this is going to look like on television. You touched on it a little bit there, Gil. What are some of the things that viewers can expect to see when they flip on the Golf Channel or on the NBC when these guys are back on the PGA Tour playing in these events?
Well, that's a good question. Because I think it's hard to, I think you'll see a lot more use of music in certain instances, whether it be coming to break, highlights, et cetera, just to get some kind of atmosphere. Because I think when you've got players out there playing, and you're going to have no reactions to shots, you're going to have no clapping, you're going to have no ambient sound. That'll bother some people. But on the other hand, I think the way that the golf is televised these days, and the way you have boom mics, the way you have mics around the greens, and to be able to hear, you're probably going to be hearing a lot more player conversations. You're going to be able to hear players talking to caddies and talking to each other from a long distance away. And I think that could be interesting. You could be getting a lot more of that sound from players, and it's one of the things that I just been watching a little bit of the German soccer, found interesting, just with no fans, all of the talking that was going on in the field, and really being able to, especially when it gets probably, if you have MLS or like English Premier League, or just take it to NBA, right, to be able to hear how much these guys communicate to each other, and telling each other things and where to go, and hearing a lot of the talking. There could be some benefits to not having folks there from the TV standpoint. From a player standpoint, Josh, I think it's going to be interesting how the players react to this once we get back. We know that there's some players who've said, hey, I'm ready to get back at it. You mentioned Rory. Rory has said that I'd like to play 3 of the first 4 events, and I'm going to plan on it. Other big names have said the same. But there are other big names who said, I'm going to take a wait-and-see attitude, particularly some international stars like Lee Westwood, Tommy Fleetwood, who do not have plans to come back over to the States and go through the quarantine process, which for them is both coming over and then going back home to the UK. And then Adam Scott, who has reservations about how all this may play out, concerns about his health, and saying, I'm more than likely I won't play until the end of July. And so seeing how players treat this, and the ones that want to get back, the ones that maybe decide, they don't want to, and frankly, right, with some of them don't need to. You can have guys that need to get back out for to earn some money, and others who don't.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things I was talking about earlier on the show was, Jeff Passett of ESPN brought up a very poignant fact, that is, for a lot of times athletes, and especially athletes who play at the highest level, they go through their entire lives with a certain environment and a certain level of, lack of a better term, their lives are coddled a little bit. And so they're used to certain environment situations. And now there's a feeling of, are they being inconvenienced? And I think for some athletes, they might be much more open to it because they say, listen, the whole world is going through this. And other athletes are saying, I'm not very comfortable going through these procedures and these situations. So it'll be interesting to see how each of these athletes handle these requirements and these red tape and the things they have to go through. They go out there, and for some athletes, whether you mentioned the Bundesliga soccer in Germany or NASCAR or the UFC, who had 3 events in basically 2 weeks in Jacksonville, every athlete has to make their own decisions. And it seems like for some guys, the red tape doesn't bother them, and other guys it does.
You're right, and they're going to be just like we are, right? The opinions and the general public about everything that's going on and protocols and guidelines run the spectrum, and that's going to be the same way in sports and in golf. And you'll have some that they just want to get back out and play, and it doesn't really matter about all that. And you're going to have others who, like I said, who really don't need the inconvenience, don't necessarily need the money, and don't want to be bothered with doing the things that you're going to have to do, like the testing before you go out, the testing when you get there, not having access to certain things on the at the golf course, not being able to bring your family to the golf course, not being being asked to travel on a chartered plane from event to event, being asked to stay just in one hotel for all the players, all of that stuff. But the other thing interesting, I think, Josh, is you will have some people embrace it. And I think you're going to have some people, who once they get to the golf course, and if you think about it, to go to the golf course and just be able to play golf basically like you would at your country club, where you just kind of show up in the parking lot, go to the range and hit balls for 20 minutes, go to the first tee, play 18 holes of golf, go right back in the car, and off you go. And that's opposite of everything that players know about PGA Tour life and about what goes on at the PGA Tour. But to be able just to go play golf and not have to deal with throngs of people, not have to deal with signing autographs, not have to deal with media requests and doing pre-round interviews or post-round press conferences, or worrying about where are my kids, or I got to take care of my buddy and his 10 guys who wanted tickets, and all that extraneous stuff, right? I think some guys are going to find it refreshing to get back out there and really not be bothered by by the kind of sterile environment. And I think that's I think we all want to get back to normal to some extent, but I think that's another concern some folks have, and I know some baseball writers have brought this up, right? Some of the things that may change may never go back, and I think in golf you have to look at that the same way, especially from the media standpoint. Will media on the golf side go back at some point and have locker room access, have access to the range, have access to players like they normally did, or that stuff that's not going to be there when we go back in June? Well, some of that stuff maybe never come back, and that's a fear, I think, amongst some of the media members. As I said, not just in golf, but in several other sports that I've heard commented.
Gil Capps joining us, the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, Golf Channel, NBC Sports. Gil, before I let you go, locally a big deal. The news came out this week that the ShopRite LPGA Classic, they are officially moving to September 28th through October 4th. They plan on having the full slate, the Pro-Am, all the rounds. Talk about, the logistics a little bit that go into moving an event, not just like a week or two, like you talked about with a couple of other events, but you're talking about moving a totally different type of season. I know the Masters is moving all the way to November. So, it's a big deal for us in this area to have the ShopRite LPGA Classic, still having to be on the schedule this year. So talk a little bit about, what it means to move an event, that far down a schedule.
Well, golf is different once again because it's an outdoor sport played upon, basically 18 different playing fields, places that are 300 to 500 acres in size, and it's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of logistics, a lot of build out that you necessarily don't have to worry about it at stadiums and ballparks and arenas. I think from a standpoint of you guys and ShopRite, which is you're lucky to have it. I mean, it's one of the best events on the LPGA and one of the best, most historic courses on the LPGA there at Seaview. I think it's in a positive position. I just think, even though we don't know what's going to happen with, obviously with COVID-19 and don't know what the fall is going to bring, I do think the more that an event can be pushed back, the better chance it has of being operated in somewhat of a normal capacity. And I know that this is actually the second time the ShopRite's been pushed back. It was originally, pushed back to the very end of July. And then this past week got announced it's going to be pushed back for the first week in October, which I think's a benefit because that July date was going to be a week before the Evian Championship in France, and who knows what's going to happen with that event or any of these events really later in July, and that could have been a bit of an issue. Could have been you could have missed out on some strong players if they needed to get over to France, and there were any kind of quarantine rules over there that were still in place. But events, I think people don't realize, and every tour is a little different. I know more from the PGA Tour side, but it runs on the LPGA side as well. But the tours, in essence, don't run most of these events. It's locally run, locally operated. With a tournament director, with a staff, and they put on these events, and they help get the title sponsors and splits the money with the tour and buys the advertising and whatnot, et cetera, et cetera. But for a lot of these events, not having fans, like the first four events on the PGA Tour, it's a money loser. It is a money loser. These tournaments, and especially the money they pass on to charities that they're involved in, they count on ticket sales, and they count on corporate sales, corporate tickets, corporate hospitality, the pro-ams. That is a huge, huge moneymaker for these events. And without those, some of the tournaments on the PGA Tour, so you know what, just from a financial standpoint, if you're looking at it, it would be, it's crazy to have an event without fans. You'd be better off just canceling the event. But for the good of the game, the good of the sport, the good of those actual tournament sponsors, they're going to carry on, and some different financial arrangements are going to be made to where everybody kind of shares that burden a little differently than before. But that's how important it is having fans and having the corporate involvement on a local and regional level for these events. So I personally, and I'm not speaking for the folks that do such a great job running that event there, but personally, I would think that would be nothing but a benefit, pushing that event back to early October, even though you could be going up against a little more competition with NFL and baseball postseason and who knows what else, right? I mean, that's the other thing. This is a whole different world. You're going to have a crowded sports landscape possibly here late summer through the end of the year, and having events being played opposite other events you never would have thought. But you just want to kind of get your event in as close as you can to normal. But even like I said, even if you go to October like ShopRite has, Josh, it's still a challenge because it's still logistics, and still if you're looking at fans, as much as golf's an outdoor sport, as much as even if you kind of limit galleries or you don't have grandstands. And pardon me if I'm wrong on this, but I think at ShopRite, I don't think there is any on-site parking, right? So how do you get how on almost, and I would say almost 90% of professional golf events in this country, how do fans get to the event? They park somewhere way off site and they take a shuttle bus in. You know, with COVID-19, I just personally, the last thing I would want to be is on a crowded shuttle bus, with other people going somewhere. So therein lies the logistical challenges of golf. As I said, it seems on one hand it'd be easy to have spectators limited and people be spread out, but then you figure out how they get there. That's another issue. And then of the cost of that, you're going to have a shuttle bus. You're going to run a shuttle bus with only a person on each row, and then that's adding cost to the tournament. How many shuttle buses can you get? And all that stuff, these tournament directors have to figure out, and going in kind of our new normal, which has potential to change week to week.
Gil Capps, Golf Channel, NBC Sports. Great insights, great perspective on all the stuff happening with the golf world as we look forward to the return of the PGA Tour and, of course, the LPGA Tour back in our area in the fall. Gil, appreciate the extended time today and appreciate you providing some perspective and thoughts on all of this today.
Always great talking golf with you, Josh. All the best.
Gil Capps joined us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, as all guests do, on 97.3 ESPN.